Today we're going to be looking at multiplying a two-digit number times a one-digit number. And you might be thinking, hey, we've been doing that for the last 2 weeks, Miss Davis. Well, yeah, we have. But today we're going to look at what's called the standard algorithm. This is the way that your parents have learned how to do it, and it's the fastest way to do it with the least amount of writing. But it wasn't the easiest way to understand, so I didn't teach it to you this way first. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at one problem. This problem is 28 times 7. We're going to look at this problem the two ways that we already know how to do, the array and the box method. And then I'm going to show you, based on those two ways we already know, then I'll show you the third way, which is called the standard algorithm. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and review the two ways we already know. So first of all, we know that if we take a big multiplication problem like this, 28 times 7, we have to break it apart into smaller parts. And we take those smaller parts and we break it apart by place value. So we have 28 in each row, and we have 7 of those rows. So 7 groups of 28. So we'll start by going ahead and multiplying by the tens place. Here's our 20 times 7. Remember, when we do that, it's going to be 2 times 7. 2 times 7 is 14. And then we put that 0 at the end because it's in the tens place. So that 14 isn't just 14 little ones, it's actually 14 tens, so 140. Then we take our second section here, that's multiplying by the ones, and that is 8 times 7. And 8 times 7, if you know that one, is 8 times 7 is 56. And then our last step, of course, was to add those two sections together to get our final answer. So we took our 140 plus our 56, and we add those up. We end up with a 6 plus 0 is 6, 5 plus 4 is 9, and a 1 out here, and so our final answer is 196. And when we worked with arrays, the big thing I wanted you to take away from this is the idea that we have to take these bigger numbers and break them apart by place value. And so we're always going to be multiplying by a tens place and a ones place, and then we add them together to get a final answer. That's the big idea that this helped us understand. Then we took this way of doing it, and last week we looked at doing what's called the box method, which is basically the same exact thing, but now we don't have all those little squares in it. And the box method helps us to make that problem a little bit shorter to write out. And it'll also help us as we work through some other types of math problems. So in 5th and 6th grade, when you multiply decimals and fractions, we'll use the same idea. But it's kind of an in-between step between what we did with arrays, where it helped us understand it, and what we're going to do with today, where we're going to do the fast way of solving it. So looking at our box method real quick, it was the same thing, multiplying by the tens. So that was 20 times 7, same thing as what was up here, 140. Multiply by the ones, which is still that 8 times 7, that second box. And then, of course, we add them to find the answer. And our answer should be exactly the same as what we just got, since we were doing the same problem, 28 times 7, add 140 plus 56, and we get the same answer of 196. Okay. That's what we just learned. Now I'm going to show you how what we learned relates to the type of problem we're going to do today. And as I said, this is called the standard algorithm. Algorithm, that word just means steps you follow to get the answer to a math problem. And standard means the way that most people do it. So in other words, today, this third way of solving this problem is the steps most people do to get the right answer. And as I said, it's the same idea as what we did before, but we take some shortcuts to make it less writing. And so that's why I'm waiting to teach this one to you until today, while you have a better understanding of what we're doing, and then we'll show you how to do the shortcuts. Now, I want you to go ahead and put your pencils down, and I'm going to go ahead and show you this problem, and all I want you to do right now is just watch. I'm going to put some extra stuff on the screen as I explain this problem to help you understand and connect it to what we've already done. But if you try to follow along and write while I'm doing this, it's going to get confusing because there's going to be all this extra stuff on the screen. So all I want you to do right now is just watch me solve the problem. And then after I've solved it, then you can pick your pencil back up and we'll go through it one more time quickly, and I'll show you all that you have to write, because it's really not that much writing. That's the cool part about this type this way of solving it. Okay, by the way, I also call the standard algorithm, that's the fancy math word, I call it a bunny ear problem or an ice cream cone problem. And I'll explain to you why I call it those two after I show you how to do the problem. So let's look at this problem. It's still the same problem, 28 times 7, but now we're writing it in that up and down way, kind of like you did when you solved addition and subtraction problems. We call this vertically. And we are going to have the same 3 steps that we've done before. We're going to have to multiply by the tens, we'll have to multiply by the ones, and then we'll have to do an adding problem to solve it. So just like our box method, there'll be a tens place section, a ones place section, and then we're going to have to do an adding section. And when we get done with this, we should get the answer 196, right? Because that's what we got the last 2 times we solved this problem. So we'll kind of keep this off to the side to help us remember how we solved it. Okay, now here's our big difference. When we solve this problem, the very first step is not going to be the tens place. It's actually going to be the ones place. We're going to start over here in the ones place. And if you think about it, when you do addition problems and you do subtraction problems, when you write them up and down like that, you do that same thing. You multiply or you start with the ones place so that if you have regrouping, it's easy to slide it over to the tens place when you need to regroup. And that's exactly what we're going to do here with multiplication. So the first step, like I said, is going to be to multiply by the ones place. Going the wrong way. Let me try it again. Okay, here we go. There we go. All right, so I'm going to do 7 times 8, which last I checked has not changed. It's still 56. Now, if I'm going to write that down, though, I shouldn't write it that way, 56, where I've got 2 digits in the ones place. I do have to regroup. So when I regroup, that's a really big number, but it's the same idea as regrouping when I did addition. Whatever the tens place part of that answer is, should go in the tens place, and whatever the ones place part is, should go in the ones place. So 56 will have a 6 in the ones place, and we're going to regroup that 5 and put it over there in the tens place. So there's that 56. That's what it looks like. Just to remind you, over here in the box method, that's where we wrote a 56. And notice we had a 6 in the ones place and a 5 in the tens place. So we really have the same thing. That's step 1. Step 2 is going to be to go ahead and multiply by the tens place. And when we do that, it's that 7 times 2 that we're solving. And of course, we know that 7 times 2 is 14. Now I'm going to go over here and point out that when we did this with the box method, we did 7 times 2 is 14, and we stuck this 0 at the end. The reason we stuck that 0 at the end was because it wasn't just 7 times 2, it was really 7 times 20, 2's in the tens place. And so we had to stick this 0 in it. Look over here when we add it, we have to stick this 0 in it so that it stays in the tens place, because it's supposed to be in the tens place, not the ones place. But when we solve this problem right here, we actually don't have to worry about putting this 0 in there as a placeholder, because there's already something written in the ones place, so that is not going to get in the way. So instead of writing this out as 140 and sticking 0 at the end for placeholder, I don't have to do that. I just put it like 7 times 2, and when I write it down, it's going to end up in the tens place, so I don't have to put 0. Anyway, here's 7 times 2. That is 14, and I'm just going to write this over here off to the side for a second and just hold that number in my brain. So there's where that 14 came from. And then we know that this last step we're supposed to do is supposed to be to add them together. I know that this 14 can't just go down here like this, because my answer is supposed to be 196. So I'm supposed to be adding a 5 to it. Well, where does that 5 come from? Oh, hey, look, it's right there. It came from 56. So what we do is we do 7 times 2 is 14, and then we're going to add in this 5 that's in the tens place. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We add that in, and we still end up with 196. Okay, now pick up your pencil, and I'm going to have you see what you have to actually write down, because it's really not that much. That's what makes this problem so fast to solve. So there's not very much writing. Pick up a pencil, and we're just going to go through it. Remember, we start over here with the ones place. we're going to multiply by the ones. Let me show you why I call this the bunny ears or the ice cream cone problem. When we multiply that ones place, it's starting with the 7 and multiplying it by that 8. And if you look at it, that's kind of like the first ear of the bunny or the first side of an ice cream cone. So I kind of draw it in my brain. I actually put the arrow on the page when I multiply it, just to help me keep track of it. You don't have to do it, but as we get to more complicated multiplication problems, I find it's kind of helpful and helps me keep track of what I've multiplied and what I haven't, to write those little arrows down. So that's the first step. 7 times 8 is 56. And we know that when we write that down, we're going to put the 5 in 50 in the tens place and the 6 in the ones place. Just a hint for that. When I write it down, sometimes it's confusing, and I've seen students that'll write like 65 instead of 56. So I usually write the tens place down first. Oh, I keep going backwards. I try that again. There we go. I usually write the tens place number down first, the 5, and then I write down the ones place digit. So I like write them in order. So I write the top 5 and then put the 6 down. And then I'm going to multiply by my tens place, which is 2 times 7 is 14. And that is the second half of your bunny ear or the second half of your ice cream cone. So it kind of looks like bunny ears. The 2 arrows make the bunny ears, or it kind of makes like an ice cream cone, however you want to think about it. I just do that to help me keep track of what I'm multiplying by. And I know you have to write the arrows down, but it's just kind of an easy way for me to keep track of what I'm multiplying. And as we get to more complicated problems, it helps me really keep track of the steps because it will get harder as we use more numbers. Anyway, all right, so there's our multiplying by tens. And most of the time, people don't actually write the answer to tens place multiplication down. So 7 times 2 is 14. Most people just hold that number in their head. They don't actually write it down. I mean, you can off to the side somewhere, but it's not what I'm going to write down here. I have to do this adding step last. So I'm going to do 7 times 2 is 14, and then I add the 5 in there. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and that gives me 196. So that's it. That's all you had to write down. It's pretty easy, huh? There's not that much to write. It's just keeping track of where it goes that you're going to take some getting used to. So let's try 5 more problems together today to go that. And I've got my bunny ears and my ice cream cone up there at the top to kind of remind you of the order. We'll multiply by the ones, multiply by the tens, and then add. So our first problem here doesn't have any regrouping. So it's really easy. When I multiply 2 times 3, that is just 6. And since it's just 6, it's a single-digit answer. I don't have to regroup. That's all I write. And then in my tens place, I have 2 times 4. Times 4 is 8. And again, there's no regrouping, nothing to add. Super easy problem, 2-digit answer, done. Our second problem here, 20 times 8. Let's go ahead and multiply by the ones place first. 8 times 0 is 0. And then 8 times 2 is 16. And again, since I don't have anything else to multiply by, there's no regrouping or anything, I'm just going to take that 16 and write it down. 160. Now let's try 13 times 5. Multiply by the ones place first. 5 times 3. Well, 5 times 3 is 5, 10, 15. Count by 5 3 times. And remember, my trick was when you write that 15, I would write down your 1 in 10 place part first as the regrouping, and then write down your ones place number there for 5. So I put 1, 5, 15. That's how I regroup it. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply by the tens. Now, again, when I have some adding to do, most people just hold the multiplication answer in their brain and then put the little, and then add that next number to it. So here's what I mean by that. I would do 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is 5. And then I add the 1 more to it. So I don't actually write that like 5 down. I just hold it in my head, 5. Add 1 more to it, and I get 6. So my answer is 65. Let's try 62 times 7. Multiply 7 times 2. 7 times 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, It's going to be 14, so I write down my 1 as a regrouping in the tens place, and my 4 is in the ones place, 14. Then I multiply the tens place. 6 times 7, do you remember it? 6 times 7? 6 times 7? It's 42, and I'm going to hold that number in my brain. 6 times 7, 42, keep it in my brain, and then I add in whatever the regrouping is. So 42 plus 1 more is 43, and my answer is 434. And then my last problem that we're going to try today is 39 times 6. So we would do 6 times 9. 6 times 9, remember your 9 trick. So if I hold up all of my 9 stacks and I count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I'm going to lay 6 finger over, and you can do 54. So 54. Then I'm going to go ahead and multiply my tens place. So this is going to be 6 times 3. 6 times 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. There it is, 18. And then I've got to add 5 more to it. And again, if you have to, you can write the 18 off to the side and add the 5 up with it somewhere off to the side. But if you can't hold it in your brain, it's a lot faster to do it that way. So 6 times 3 is 18. Add 5, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So 234 is your answer. Now that's all we're going to work on for today. And then if you tune back tomorrow, we're going to finish the 5 remaining problems, and then I'll have a practice assignment for you to do going along with this. Good job, guys.